Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Black Lightning as well as the season premiere of Legion. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Black Lightning, you can skip to what I say about the season premiere of Legion. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Black Lightning. A very good episode. Obviously, Vice Principal Lady is kind of like, okay, she has to do her job in taking down Jeff. And how does she do that? She gets some cops to frame him. At first, I'm like, oh man, you framing him. I was like, well, I guess that's a lot easier than just outright killing him, because by killing him, you make it into this whole ugly scene. Like, oh, because he's kind of a public figure in Freeland, being like, oh, such a well-known and respected principal, so it'd be a lot harder to do that. So I guess it's just easier to frame him. But then on top of that, it's like, oh, no, because that's part one of the plan. Because part two is to get him transported, prove that he's Black Lightning, and then kill him. Which, two things. One, if he turned out not to be Black Lightning after what you did, they would still end up most likely killing him anyway, because he would know too much. It's like, whoa, we kind of exposed ourselves, we overplayed him. We're so sure he was Black Light. I guess he's not. Well, he's seen what's happening here, so we can't let him go. So there's that. Other thing I was wondering is, like, what would they do about explaining what happened to Jeff? Would they fake his death and be like, oh yeah, and he died in like some prison transport or whatever? I mean, they're making it seem like it was a federal thing, which obviously the ASA has government, well, is a government organization, so they can bring stuff down on a federal level. But it's kind of like, I guess they could just make him disappear and you never have to worry about something like that. It's just like, oh, he's in some deep dark hole and they just can keep it up like that, like he's in some prison somewhere. So there's that. So I wasn't expecting them, like I said, the frame up. I thought like, oh, you're going to come after him hard. I mean, to be fair, he blew up one of their armories. One, not all of their armories, so they still got guns out there. But that's so interesting to me, because when you actually think about it in retrospect, this is the third superhero to ever get arrested, like amongst this whole Arrowverse situation. Because Barry got arrested this season, obviously got Jeff this time, and Oliver, obviously, well, to be fair, Oliver's gotten arrested multiple times over the course of Arrow, so this isn't his first time. But it's like, yeah, we got, man, it's just heroes can't never catch a break. Fortunately, none of the legends have been arrested, at least not to my knowledge. I don't think Kara's been arrested yet, so that's interesting. And it kind of brought up a lot of stuff. Like first you had Jennifer like almost about to trip, like, you know, she's about to summon up her powers, and her dad's like, Jeff is like, calm down, trying to keep her calm. Same thing for Anissa too. Like, she was about to go, it's like, nah, y'all gotta keep it calm, because I don't even know if it was just a situation of Jeff knowing that what this all had to be about, but at the very least, he knew not to use his powers. And it's something Lynn touches on, because Jennifer's like, why doesn't he just bust out? Because it's like, there are situations in life you can't just go out just using your powers, or just go like, can't be solved with a punch or your superpowers. Because for Jeff, it isn't just about being Black Lightning. It's also about just being, well, Jeff, the good that he can do as a principal and a pillar to the community, but also can do as Black Lightning. He won't be able to do both if he's, you know, outed as just, you know, as being both those people, you know, so it make doing his job as the other one hard. Also what it would mean for his family and stuff like that. And the question is, and I'm curious, what would that mean? Like, if he is caught as Black Lightning, would they automatically assume the same thing about, like, you know, Thunder potentially being, you know, Anissa, and would that gain them Jennifer's attention too? Because once again, it's like, no one really knows how this whole metahuman thing works, because like I said, Jeff is the first one to have being a metahuman and having children with, at least within this canon and stuff like that. So I'm sure it's a situation of like, no one really knows the science behind, like, oh yeah, because like Jeff didn't get his powers naturally. So it's like, who would have guessed it? You know, that same conversation has come up before. Like, why would you think that Anissa or, Jennifer had abilities, you know? So I was also interested too, because I was curious to see if Jeff really was going to end up telling Henderson the truth, because Henderson's the only person that really had his best. I mean, obviously his family and Gamby, but it's like, obviously amongst the police, like, Henderson was the only one that had his best interest at heart, or like police were kind of beating him up and treating him like he was just scum. You even saw that corrupt cop almost about ready to pull a gun on him, and Jeff was like, okay, I see how it is. It's like, yep. But what I also liked was the fact is that some of his students were like, no, you're not about to take him. But he had to also tell his students, like, no, don't do this. I just love that shows you how much of a good job he's done, to the point the students are like, no, this ain't right. Like, we know what this is. Ain't no way you caught, like, Mr. Pierce with some, like, drugs or something. It's like, ain't no way in hell. You saw that in some, like, the interviews and stuff like that. There was like that one lady that was like, oh man, he got people calling his students calling him Black Jesus. It's like, okay, I guess that's just kind of where the rumor's spreading about that. But then you had the other people be like, no, ain't no way. Like, it's like just another person they're up there framing for something. So, but all the while, like, you have Jeff trying to keep his powers under control. But the thing I was getting to was, I was almost wondering, like, because, Henderson's like, yo, what's up with this whole situation? Why is this turning into like a federal thing? He's like, I don't know. It's like, he's like, okay, I'm still going to help you nevertheless, but I was hoping you make this a little easier. So he knows that Jeff is hiding. I thought Jeff could have let him in on a little bit, but it's like, no, letting him know all that he knows, it wouldn't really do any good. Like, even if he was like, yeah, this is government organization, it's because I know the truth, then that starts many different questions. Plus, you don't know who's listening is what he's kind of already been, Henderson already established, so that they could use that against him. To be fair, it's already in that awkward situation because Jeff was kidnapped when Gambier had the crap beat out of him, so how do you explain that away? I guess that was just kind of like the argument could be like some random people. Well, no, because they already kind of announced themselves as kind of like federal people. So it's kind of like, I don't know. How do you skate around that? That's already turned into a whole thing in itself. That's just interesting to me. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of getting distracted by all that. It's just interesting. So I'm curious, in the long run, will he ever tell Henderson? I feel like Henderson will probably be one of the people out of like the family circle to find out the truth about, Jeff and BL. Like, I think he'll eventually tell him, but obviously because obviously him and Henderson are kind of on opposite sides of the law, very similar, but obviously him being Black Knight and he skates that side of the law, but obviously him and Henderson are friends, so you don't want to compromise both your friendship and your professional, like, relationship as, like, Black Lightning and him being a cop, so it turns into that sticky situation. But it was pretty badass. I was like, how are they going to, because I was like, yeah, the only way you could do that is you had, like, someone replace. I was like, the only way you could do that is get someone to pretend to be Black Lightning. I was like, how are you going to fake that? And then it's like, oh, with a hologram. I was like, good. Sadly, you don't have a shape-shifting Martian to help you with this. So I should just say a Martian, because like shape-shifting Martian, it makes it seem like not all Martians can shape-shift. It's kind of what I'm, nevertheless, it just, this would be one of those times you would like, man, I wish I had John Jones in my life. Or Ralph apparently, because he can shape-shift too. So I didn't even think about that too. That's another shapeshifter we have. Technically 3, because Arrow has the human target. He only popped up in one episode, but he's very good at taking and pretending to be other people. So there's that. But nevertheless, that was pretty ingenious and kind of making it into this whole scene. I love Gambi even complimenting himself later on. He's like, yo, I invented like a self-driving van. It's like, that's pretty impressive. But the whole hologram thing was pretty sick too. And getting all these people. I even love that dude during the interview. He's like, yo, but see, I trip every time I see Black Lightning. Plus, he got thunder. It's like, yo, that's gotta be so good having like, kind of commenting on how like sexy Thunder is and everything, which I can only assume that's his lady right beside him. He's having all those conversations. She kind of shoves him like, really, dude? Really? I'm right here and you talking like that, which is also weird because obviously like no one else knows this, but that's his daughter. So that's that whole weird conversation where it's probably like, yo, don't talk about my daughter like that. It's like, that's my baby girl, So just a funny thing to think about. So, but obviously, this did kind of put things in perspective for Jennifer too, because it's like, it made her scared because it's like, people have gone away for a very long time for this particular situation. She knows her dad didn't do anything, but it's like, it doesn't really matter when all the evidence says he does, even though the evidence was planted and stuff like that. So for a moment, she was actually scared. She's trying to be strong for herself and for her mom, but her mom is like, it's okay to be scared. Being strong and scared means you have sense that you're not just completely like, not being scared in a situation and be like, yeah, because there's always a thing, like, it's okay to be afraid. Like, it takes courage to admit when you're afraid. So this situation does seem like when it's all said and done, we do seem like Gambi and Jeff are in good place again. He's like, I don't know if I'll be able to forgive you, but I cannot forget all that you've done for my family. So it's like things are there because they've still been trying to work back to where they were. And it's like, things might not be where they were, but it's like, I hope that, Jeff's like, maybe we can find a new balance to everything. So that's pretty neat. Like I said, I still don't think like Anissa knows everything, because I think that's a detail that Jeff is probably keeping to himself. Like, he probably doesn't want the rest of the family to know that aspect about Gambi, about his 100% involvement with all of this. Like, in particular, like, he's the reason why Alvin got killed. So there's that. We also have Henderson taking down that dirty chief, deputy chief, and now he's the deputy chief himself, which is going to be interesting because now he's taking over that position. You're going to have people like Tobias coming to him and trying to. I mean, obviously they're not the only dirty cops. Him and that other dude. I'm sure there's other dirty cops in there too, but obviously like the deputy chief dude, Kamen was kind of like the main one, but I'm sure there's others, and so Henderson's going to probably try and clean house. But I hope this isn't. I'm curious to see what happens going forward with his whole situation. Like I said, I get the feeling like Tobias will try and approach him, which will kind of verify what Black Lightning's already said about Tobias being back and everything. So. And then finally, there's also the whole situation with the vice principal. She tried to report in like, hey, free Jeff, because like obviously he's not Black Lightning, because we saw Black Lightning all over town, but they weren't letting it go because it's like, no, you got your job, focus on that. And it's like either because they were so certain he was, or they were going to use this as an excuse like, well, we need to take him off the board anyway. We need to confirm for ourselves, you know. It's like they're not, you know, with everything that's, you know, possible with metas, they probably weren't going to take any chances. But because even Gamby's like, yeah, they'll keep them believing that for now, but eventually they will come back. Especially when Martin's so sure in his head. And obviously, too, we don't like Jeff doesn't know that his vice principal is the one that kind of set him up and sold him out with this whole situation. So I'm curious to see what goes forward. Like, obviously, like, it's going to be awkward. It's like, oh, yeah, because like I said, we obviously know she has a huge, like, crush on Jeff, and it's like, plus she's the one that kind of sent him to jail. She's keeping an eye on him. Not only him, but she's also checking out other students who've potentially gained abilities from Greenlight. We do see that one of the test subjects died in this episode because of the constant transporting. So one in particular died, which is like super sucking. So I'm curious to see what happens going forward with all of this. I mean, we literally only have like 2 episodes left this season, so I'm curious to see like how this all like comes to a head going forward, you know. It's like, will Jeff find out before the end of the season that she's part of the ASA? And just like the way it seems like she kind of gets reports and stuff like that, I feel like she ain't just some regular agent. I feel like she's got some clout within the organization, but maybe that's just me. It's also interesting too because Jeff has had his reputation as Black Lightning besmirched, and now he had his reputation as Jeff besmirched. Because it's kind of interesting, because I was wondering, like, if he'd just get out, and then, like, what would that mean going forward? Like, you know, because there'd always be a little stink about, like, Jeff, is because it's like, no matter what, even if you were exonerated, I figure, like, there'll still be some talk or something like that. Under these circumstances, it seems like, no, everyone's just letting it go. It's like, yeah, he was 100% set up, like, there's no truth to it. I'm curious to see whether that do anything, because even if he is exonerated, the fact is he was arrested in the first place, because, you know, maybe in their minds it's like you're still kind of guilty by association, because maybe a lot of the people on the board, or, you know, maybe I'm curious, because obviously at this point in time the vice principal doesn't have any reason to go after him anymore, because like, oh, Jeff's clean, he's fine, I've worked for him years, there's no way he's Black Lightning. And now it's been solidified in her mind too. I'm curious to see what happens when she actually finds out it's the truth, like, because it is a situation of she will have to put him down. They want Black Lightning dead anyway, so if she finds out, she is going to have to kill him, but we'll see whether that heart of hers kind of gets in the way or not, because she seems like she's very desensitized, because, like I said, just being like, oh yeah, I gotta look for some new subjects or whatever, but when it comes to Jeff, she kind of wavers a bit. So, because it seems like, because she doesn't even want to consider the possibility that he's Black Lightning, because I guess it would also mean that she's not very good at her job, that literally he's been lying to her for so long, but, you know, maybe her eyes are clouded with love, you know, well, in affection, I should really say, not necessarily love, but I'm just wondering, will there be any extenuating circumstances continuing from this, like him being in this position and stuff like that. Like I said, once again, it says it a lot that a lot of people are like, nah, you got it wrong. Ain't no way. Obviously, Jeff is being set up, especially with the way the system is, especially in Freeland, with all the corrupt cops and everything. So that speaks volumes all on its own. So, but like I said, we'll just have to wait to the next episode to see where all this takes us going forward. And now moving on to the season premiere of Legion, a crazy season premiere. There's a lot that went down in this episode, so we got to break things down. Obviously, we have David returning. It seems like it's been a year, but for him, it only feels like it was just yesterday. And what's kind of interesting about that whole aspect that I'm really liking, and I think that's something we're going to see with the continuation of the season, is people not being able to trust David, which kind of makes sense to a certain extent because they're kind of carrying over what was kind of felt in season one. Like the moment everyone found out about like the Shadow King, it's like, well, the fact of the matter is, can you trust David, especially when he's been connected to something for so long? Then he's all of a sudden he's gone for so long, and obviously for Potomi, it's like David says he doesn't remember anything, but then I look inside his head and it's like there's stuff there, which. We know that to a certain extent, David's abilities can block Potomi's, but to what extent, we really don't know. Like, we know he was blocking Potomi's powers a little bit last season, but to be fair, that might have been more on Farouk's side of things. But it does beg the question, like, what's going on there? But the thing is, like, I like the aspect of, like, even everyone's suspicious. Potomi, even Sid, even though she's like he's my man, so of course I believe him. But you even have Clark all kind of doubting whether or not, like, David really doesn't remember everything that it's like, oh, it's just a little convenient that all that time you've just happened to be like, oh, coming back with amnesia and stuff like that. So a lot of things have changed. Obviously, we never actually got to find out what exactly happened to Summerland. We know that a lot of the key people are here working with Division 3, but that's about it. Like, we don't really know much beyond that. Like, what happened to all the people who live in Summerland? Are they still living there? I mean, it seems like Melanie's working with Division. Well, it seems like she's not really working with them anymore because it seems like she's spending most of her time high. I guess it's because it's like they're no closer to tracking down Oliver. She's not any closer to getting back the man she loves. And so that's kind of taking its toll, which is kind of interesting because she's self-medicating, which kind of a big part of, like, you know, David's story back in the day was because of everything that he was self-medicating. So, but I also thought was kind of interesting little thing that Melanie was saying is like, oh yeah, those men of ours, they come and then they go, and basically saying it's destiny. And it's like, you know, it's not their fault that they come and go. It's like, it's destiny. And then, like, who would we? We'd be bitches if we got in Destiny's way, you know, that like, of what it wants. You know, obviously her situation with Oliver, and obviously Sid's situation with David, and it's like, but these are the men we love, so, you know, what can we do? And it's like, the sad thing is that when they go away and then when they come back, they're not quite the same, which you can tell that kind of resonated with Sid a little bit, because I think that was kind of her biggest fear. And, you know, especially in Melanie's case, is she got, you know, him back, but he didn't quite remember, so he wasn't quite the same. But obviously at the end of the season, we know he remembered her, but now it's like, where things stand now, it's just kind of spiraling. You know, it's like you got him back after so long, and then you immediately lost him. You didn't even really get to spend any time with him. So it's enough to kind of make you kind of lose it, and kind of, I mean, to be fair, like I said, it's been a year trying to track him down, so it's probably enough to kind of break her hopes. So she's not really been working, because it's like, oh yeah, the boss, you know, Admiral Fukuyama was kind of like, are you ready to get back to work? Which she didn't really answer, so. Also, what's kind of interesting, it's never brought up again in the episode, is Sid whole situation of when she's switching with the cat. The moment she started licking herself and kind of doing that, I was like, did you switch with the animals? Like, because it's like, it's just weird, you're not talking, you're just doing that. And it's like, oh, she did do that. And even Carrie was like, I hate when you do that. It's like, she's practicing. I guess she's practicing on the length of her, like, body switching, because, you know, obviously it has its limitations, so I guess she's trying to just practice and focus more on doing it for long periods of time, I guess, little by little. So that's the only reason I can assume for that, not unless that's meant more so for tactical reasons of like, okay, this way she can practice on animals so she can possess other animals, which she never used it like that at the beginning in season 1. It's always been people. This is our first time seeing, because that was something I was wondering, is like, can that be used on any, like, you know, living object? And it turns out to be the case. I wonder, could that apply to bugs too, or is it just, I mean, I don't know. We don't know the full scope of her abilities yet, so. But it seems like basically there's a disease going around known as catalyst. Basically, it freezes people, and basically they're stuck there chattering their teeth for forever. You would assume the human body would die, but maybe this catalyst kind of keeps them in a ever state of never kind of growing old or needing to eat or anything like that. And it seems like it's stemming from Oliver / Lenny / Farouk. And that was kind of, because at the beginning they were like, oh, if he's infected, we need to kill him. So immediately I was like, oh, so I was like, does that mean like he's like, Farouk has been spreading his, like, because I thought that was kind of the whole point. That's kind of like, after rewatching season 1, I start thinking, is that what Farouk was kind of aiming for? Is to possess, like, spread himself amongst different people so that he can amass his power in that shape or form. I mean, would that even be possible to kind of siphon himself off little by little into other people like that until he's got control of multiple people? Would that even be possible? Or does he, I guess because it is kind of his essence and in his soul, maybe it all has to be in one. It can't just divide up and, divide up like that. Who knows? But, so that's initially what I thought, like, this infection was. But then it turns out to be this catalyst thing, which apparently it seems like only mutants can get. It seems like that might have been what they might have been aiming for, too. Like, oh, if he's infected, maybe they meant by Farouk naturally. Like, what if Farouk kind of found its way inside of him when we're still there? Because the moment Carrie took his, like, hazmat suit top off, like, people with guns popped up and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he summons Carrie, and Carrie's like, no, she's ready for a fight. But everyone else backed down. So I guess it was a combination of the two. I mean, I would assume it has to be the first one, like, worried about the infection of, like, Farouk being inside your body, because it's like, it seems like this catalyst doesn't work on mutants. It only works on regular humans. But does that mean eventually down the road it can be a mutation in itself? Which this thing in itself seems like a mutation, but could it mutate even further to the point it could work on mutants? And why isn't it working on mutants? Why only humans? Is there actually something Farouk is getting out of this? Like I said, is there a bit of that, like, to it, that he is putting a little bit of himself in all these different humans, and with so many minds collected, will it make his psychic abilities even stronger? Who knows? What's kind of interesting, because even at the beginning, Farouk, is with Oliver, Lenny, and Oliver, and it's kind of like, oh, we're trapped. And then you zoom out, there's a dude in his shades and glasses, and it zooms out even further, and then it's Oliver being at a club or a bar, and it's like, okay, so is that them in, like, their mental astral plane? Are they trapped somewhere by that dude, and that's Oliver with a little bit of Lenny that's not captured trying to fight back? I have no idea. Like, a lot of this just kind of guessing at this point. Very similar to season 1, where you just have not 100% idea what's going down. All you can do is guess until, like, the show kind of breaks it down for you. So an interesting thing too is it does seem like we are continuing a little bit of where season 1 left us with David in regards of, like, his mental situation. Because part of me was wondering, like, all of season 1, like, the whole aspect of like David's powers. Like, I was wondering, like, him, what would that really entail? And it seems like he is keeping an aspect that was gained at the end of season 1, and that's, like, his logical side of his brain, the British side of his brain, which at the time I was talking about season 1, I didn't know the actor who plays David, Dan Stevens, is actually British. So that was him using his natural accent when he was being the logical brain. So I thought that was kind of neat. I always find it funny when actors get to do that. Like, it's like, they're breaking character. Like, when they get to actually use their own natural accent within a show or whatever they're in. I always think that's kind of an interesting thing. But nevertheless, because at first I was thinking, like, there's at least 2 voices you hear in David's head when he's talking. So I was like, so there's at least, like, maybe 2 other, like, versions of, like, people voices in his head. It's like, no. That's most likely David talking to his logical side of the brain, because he's like, how much do they know? And then, like, his logical side of the brain was like, no, well, don't lie to them, because they probably know everything. So it's interesting how that works like that. And I appreciate that being an angle that still continues. Like, maybe as the season progresses, we'll kind of get to see it manifest itself again, like it did in season 1, where we get to see 2 Davids at once, or maybe it's always just going to be in his head. But it happens at least twice in this season. I mean, in the episode. God, sorry. I'm all over the place with, like, talking, so I apologize for that. Also, Fukuyama's whole situation is weird. The whole basket on his head, and then all the ladies with mustaches who have machines in their heads would make it impossible for their minds to be read. But they're like, those glasses, I guess that's kind of like hooking them up to a network or whatever that is. That's just kind of a weird situation. Like, why the mustaches? I don't get that. So that's something else we got to, like, find out about later on. But then, like, obviously you have the situation of David, like, he dives into his memories because of the thing that Carrie puts him in, and it's helping him kind of remember, because he's supposed to be trying to track down Oliver / Lenny. And then, like, all of a sudden it cuts to him in a club, and he's dancing, having a dance-off versus Lenny and Oliver, and it's like, wait, what? So part of me was wondering, like, is that supposed to be a manifestation of, like, this is actually a psychic battle, what that's supposed to represent? But then something later on makes me second guess that, because obviously, like, he ends up remembering something where it seems like when he was inside of that ball, he ends up talking to Sid, but Sid doesn't talk to him because she doesn't say anything. So she draws stuff, and, like, basically it's charades, and he has to figure it out. So it's like time is running out. that basically he needs to help Farouk find his body. So it's like, why? And she basically makes a heart and says that she loves him. And that the fact is that she's Sid from the future. This is David from the present, but she's Sid from the future. How far in the future? Is this like 1 year in the future Sid like the one we're at right now? Or is this a Sid even further in the future? So, but why would she need, he's supposed to help Farouk find his body? Because that was kind of the concern. Like, if Farouk finds his original body, he will be unstoppable. Which is kind of interesting to me that it wasn't destroyed. I guess maybe because he's too powerful for his body to be destroyed. Because you would think, like, I guess maybe that would still count as murder. So maybe that's why Professor X didn't do it. His dad. Even though we haven't really outright said his dad is Professor X. Everything literally at the end of season 1 is pointing to it being Professor X. So I think I'm okay with saying that without spoiling it. Literally, that's like the one thing I went into this entire series knowing, like, well ahead of time, was that I think I talked about that in season 1 as well. But nevertheless, maybe that's the reason why. It's just, I don't know. It could be a combination of the two reasons why Farouk's body was just hidden. And who was the ones that did the hiding? Was it, well, because I think even Division was like, they didn't know where his body was. Wasn't that the whole case? So it wasn't them, so maybe it was his dad that hid it away, or someone else entirely. Who knows? Yeah, because obviously if it was a Division, they would know exactly where the body was, so it was sealed away like many, many years ago, so, well, as we can tell, like at the very least 30 years ago, so. But then we see David at the end kind of teleporting, like he's in his pajamas, and he ends up at the club where Lenny and Oliver are. So it's like, wait, so was that whole thing in his head like what Potomi saw in his head, that memory of the club? Is that not actually a memory? Was that him seeing the future? Like while he was in that, like, is that what's happening here? Is it, the thing is David pretending like he doesn't remember for the sake of like he knows that bad shit's going to go down because he was in that sphere? He knows that bad things are going to go down? Or is it because it was so much that it ended up overwhelming his brain so that he really doesn't remember everything? Everything's kind of in fragments or something like that. Because maybe the reason why it didn't pop up so clearly to Potomi is because it is like a future thing. Like I'm being able to see the future. I don't even know if that's under his wheelhouse or not. Like it seems like it was that spirit thing, I would assume, but maybe it helped channel his powers and make it so that he could see into the future. And maybe that's what because we saw him at the end at the club and they're like, hey there. And it's like, huh, so is that supposed to mean like, so what, and that's something Potomi brought up in the first season. It's like, when you remember stuff, things aren't always exact because when you're trying to remember them later on, given enough time, things kind of fade away. So it's been a year, so maybe he saw this future event a year ago, so certain things change. But then what's up with the whole dancing scene, which is kind of interesting because even when that was happening, it even affected Carrie on the outside. So it's like, I don't know. Which is kind of fascinating. The fact is that we are dealing with a future arc like that. Not just like, oh, we are further in the future for, it's the future for David because it's been a year and he doesn't remember anything. But it's also because we're potentially dealing with even further in the future with this whole Sid thing. So the thing is, like, that's the question. How much of it is him just hiding it from her? And how much, it seems like he's hiding, because he went out of his way not to tell anyone about that. Is it because he knows that they'll look at him more suspiciously? Or is it because of running into Sid that he's reluctant about talking about anything? Like, does he not remember everything? Is everything coming back in bits and pieces? And so he's slowly trying not to say anything because he knows where Sid potentially might end up. So he's not saying anything. He just wants to keep her close and love her without any issue. I don't know. Because it's kind of interesting because like while Sid was sleeping, you see him on the other side, on the other bed, just not like with his eyes wide open, but another part you see his eyes close and then kind of open and close again. So it's hard to say if he's even sleeping at all. So. And then the final scene, we see him kind of like, coming back from the club in his pajamas, and it just showed him kind of like teleporting there, and he's there, and Sid's laying in the bed, and he's staring at her. So it's like, it's a combination of taking what we had in season 1, like, oh, what's real and what's not. Now it's what's real what's fake and what's past, present, and future type of shit. And it's like, wait, what? You're stacking time stuff on top of a psychological show. It's like, this is going to get so confusing. Could go to add another element, just like what's real and what isn't, you know? So it's like, because I also like what they brought up in this episode, an element, the whole discussion of like an idea just kind of, you know, birthing from an egg, and then, you know, delusions, basically are able to exist by essentially paraphrasing here, killing an idea. And what we saw was kind of like, we saw like one kind of crawling into David's mind when he was with Sid, like it crawls towards their bed. So is that a little plant from Farouk? Like, is this all real, or is it partly real and then the other bits are stuff Farouk still because it's something Potomi brings up in the episode too. It's like, well, he was with Farouk for such a long time, literally all of his life. So who's to say like the Shadow King doesn't still have at least some sway over him, you know? So especially when they show that scene of like Lenny killing the chicklet and basically the delusion, like monster, like oozy monster thing eating the bird, and then it's like, and Lenny's all letting it kiss her and put its, like, you know, feet/hand all over her face. So it's like, which makes you wonder, is that what that's supposed to be? Because it's interestingly enough, like when Sid was walking around, she saw like a little line like that in the like the facility. So it's like so these delusions aren't just in people's heads, they are like physical things too. So does that mean that it, like, Lenny sent it, it's tracked its way back to David, and then now like it was in the real world? Is it like a psychic thing that manifested itself and now it like literally buried itself into David's mind potentially? Like I said, I don't know. Walking away from this premiere with so many questions, but I'm super excited to have Legion back, and I'm very excited to see what the hell goes down this season. Like already from the bat, they're being like, yep, we're just as weird and like all over the place as the first season, but all over the place in a good way, because like it is a mystery that you kind of have to like unravel a little bit yourself, you know? So I do appreciate that element to it. So I'm very interested to see what the season has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good